Oh yeah, watch.
This news update captures a live conflict involving the Biafran Liberation Army and Orsu local vigilante groups, with reports of heavy gunfire exchanges in Biafra territories. Fighters from different factions, including vigilantes and indigenous youths, appear to be joining forces either in support of or opposition to the Biafran Liberation Army, creating complex allegiances. Meanwhile, a new group of recruits was introduced by Biafra Deputy Prime Minister Dr. Ngozi Orabueze, claiming the enlistment was directed by Biafra Prime Minister Simon Ekpa. However, some critics have raised internal criticism over these new recruitments, questioning why previously active fighters like Commander Gentle and Commander Holy Ghost are being sidelined, hinting at division within the Biafran movement. The critic laments internal conflict among Igbos, criticizing the creation of multiple militant groups instead of forming a united front for Biafra's liberation. On May 30th, 2025, the group commemorates Biafran heroes and heroines, reaffirming their loyalty to Simon Ekpa and asserting their defense of the sovereignty of the United States of Biafra, which was declared in November 2024. Meanwhile, the Biafra Liberation Army have issued a serious warning to the Nigerian army and authorities, demanding they vacate the 40 Biafran states, promising resistance and armed defense. The video briefly features a damaged police truck, with an estimate that repairs could cost 200,000 naira to 300,000 naira, showing tensions between local youths and the police. In the thick forests of southeastern Nigeria, in a territory now fiercely defended by fighters calling it the United States of Biafra, the rising tension between the Biafran Liberation Army and various local defense groups reached another dangerous milestone. It was a hot, humid morning in Orsu, a town nestled within the larger Anambra state, and the sound that broke through the stillness was unmistakably the crackle of gunfire. It wasn't the first time people in these communities had heard such sounds, but this time it wasn't just the Nigerian army or the police confronting pro-Biafran agitators.
You don't see the importance of the
time, it was fellow Igbo people, local youths organized under the Orsu Vigilante Group, engaging in an intense and deadly shootout with the Biafran Liberation Army. The battle began as dawn broke on the edges of May and June 2025. By the early hours of the morning, people in the surrounding villages, some still recovering from the May 30th commemoration of Biafran heroes, were already hiding under beds, behind concrete walls, and inside the bush for safety. The confrontation was not a small skirmish. It was a serious clash that many witnesses later described as one of the loudest and most prolonged they had heard in recent memory. In the fog of bullets and smoke, it became clear that something more than a territorial dispute was playing out. This was not simply about who controlled the forest paths, the checkpoints, or the motor parks. This was a political conflict. It was an ideological divide. It was a rift among people who once dreamed of a common cause. What led to the clash, as gathered from various sources who either survived the conflict or observed it from a cautious distance, was a brewing tension between the Biafran Liberation Army and the Orsu Vigilante Group. The Biafran Liberation Army has long positioned itself as the armed protector of what it calls the United States of Biafra, a territory whose independence was redeclared by Simon Nyoku Ekpa in November 2024. On the other hand, the Orsu Vigilante Group, a loosely organized but locally trusted security outfit, has seen its influence grow in the past 2 years. They maintain that their duty is to protect local communities from armed robbers, kidnappers, and sometimes from separatist militias who they accuse of extorting villagers and harassing traders. But something shifted in recent months. The Biafran Liberation Army began deploying more fighters in and around Orsu. Their patrols became bolder. They began issuing orders to local residents. Checkpoints bearing Biafran flags sprang up on roads where the Nigerian flag had once flown. With these changes came confrontation. When the vigilantes demanded that the Biafran fighters halt their control over local markets and stop taxing traders, the Biafran Liberation Army responded by sending more troops into Orsu. Then, as May 30th approached, a date sacred to Biafrans worldwide who remember it as Biafra Heroes Day, the tension could no longer be contained. The gun battle reportedly began after a standoff near the market square of Orsu Ihiteukwa. According to several accounts from residents, fighters from the Biafran Liberation Army set up an unauthorized checkpoint near the community center, intercepting travelers and demanding loyalty pledges to Simon Nyoku Ekpa's government. When members of the Orsu vigilante group approached them to request the dismantling of the checkpoint, an argument broke out. Accusations were traded. Voices rose. Then came the first shot. Nobody is quite sure who fired it, but within minutes, gunfire erupted from both sides. People ran for cover, shouting for their children, locking shop doors, hiding under stairwells. It was chaos. The fighting lasted for more than 3 hours. Videos later surfaced showing frightened residents crouching behind walls, while heavy gunfire echoed in the background. Smoke billowed from several burnt kiosks. A police vehicle, which had reportedly been left abandoned after a recent raid in the area, was shown riddled with bullet holes. The hood had been ripped open by gunfire. One of the tires was torn to shreds. The estimated damage, according to local auto mechanics, could cost anywhere between 200,000 naira and 300,000 naira to repair. But money was not what people were worried about. It was the message the damaged vehicle sent. It was the image of powerlessness. If the police could not control the situation, what hope did ordinary citizens have? In the middle of this volatile situation, a new development came from a very important voice within the self-declared government of Biafra. Dr. Ngozi Orabueze, the woman who serves as Deputy Prime Minister under Simon Nyoku Ekpa's leadership, released a video message calling for a fresh round of military recruitment. Speaking in a mixture of English and Igbo language, she declared that it was time for more indigenous youths to rise up and defend Biafra land. She said the order for recruitment came directly from Simon Nyoku Ekpa himself. The video, which quickly went viral on social media platforms and pro-Biafra forums, showed Dr. Ngozi Orabueze addressing a group of new recruits. They stood in formation, dressed in matching outfits, some holding wooden rifles, others looking barely 18 years old. Dr. Ngozi Orabueze was passionate in her speech. She told the recruits that Biafra was now fully declared and that they were the soldiers of the future. She reminded them that May 30th was not just a memorial, but a call to duty. She praised the sacrifices of past Biafran soldiers, the men and women who died during the Nigerian Biafran Civil War of 1967 to 1970, and those who had fallen more recently during clashes with Nigerian forces. She said these new recruits were the future defenders of the new Biafran state, which Simon Nyoku Ekpa had proclaimed independent less than 7 months earlier. However, not everyone was pleased with the developments. In fact, even within the ranks of pro-Biafra supporters, there was a growing discomfort about the internal fractures appearing within the movement. A video surfaced showing a known critic of Simon Nyoku Ekpa's leadership style voicing concern over what he described as selective favoritism in the recruitment process. This critic, who introduced himself as Comrade Okechukwu Nwosu, asked why experienced commanders like Commander Gentle and Commander Holy Ghost had been pushed aside in favor of unknown new faces. He expressed deep frustration, accusing the current Biafran leadership of dividing the movement by promoting loyalty over competence. Comrade Okechukwu Nwosu did not mince words. He said it was shameful that Igbos were now turning their weapons on one another instead of presenting a united front against their common challenges. He lamented the proliferation of armed factions, each claiming to represent the real vision of Biafra, yet fighting among themselves for dominance. According to him, it was this internal conflict that was doing more damage to the dream of Biafra than any action taken by the Nigerian government. He warned that if the infighting continued, it could spell the end of the Biafran liberation movement as people had come to know it. The criticism sparked debates across Biafran radio stations, Facebook live streams, Twitter spaces, and community WhatsApp groups. Supporters of Simon Nyoku Ekpa fired back, saying the leadership had every right to choose new loyalists, especially when some of the older commanders had reportedly violated orders. They accused Commander Gentle and Commander Holy Ghost of disobeying strategic commands during recent operations. The loyalists also defended Dr. Ngozi Orabueze's call for recruitment, arguing that the new blood was necessary to revitalize the struggle and prepare for upcoming confrontations with the Nigerian army. Indeed, the Biafran Liberation Army wasted no time making their next move. Shortly after the Orsu gun battle, they issued a video message through one of their field spokesmen. In the clip, a masked man stood with a rifle slung over his shoulder, flanked by 6 other fighters. They read a strongly worded statement declaring that the Nigerian army must vacate all Biafran territories immediately. They listed the number of states they considered part of the Biafran homeland as 40, extending far beyond the traditional southeastern zone. They said they would no longer tolerate Nigerian security forces patrolling what they called sacred Biafran land. Any attempt to continue military occupation, the speaker warned, would be met with armed resistance. The message ended with a salute to Simon Nyoku Ekpa, Dr. Ngozi Orabueze, and the newly inaugurated United States of Biafra. The fighters raised their weapons in unison, shouting slogans that echoed across the palm-lined forest. It was a scene filled with emotion, but also with danger, because even as they declared sovereignty, the reality on the ground remained far from resolved. The Nigerian government had not recognized the Biafran state. The army continued its operations in the region, and as the events in Orsu proved, the local population remained caught in the middle of a battle that seemed to grow more complicated with each passing day. As the dust settled over Orsu, families came out from hiding. Some discovered bullet holes in their walls. Others found that their livestock had scattered into the bush. A few homes were partially burned. The local market remained closed for 3 days. Residents were afraid, not just of another attack, but of the creeping realization that they were no longer sure who was protecting them. Was it the vigilantes they grew up trusting, or the Biafran soldiers promising a new nation? Or were both sides now part of a conflict spiraling beyond control? Amid this confusion, the government in Abuja remained mostly silent. No official statement was released about the Orsu gun battle. No confirmation of military deployment. No address from the Inspector General of Police. For many in Biafran territories, this silence was further proof that they had been forgotten. And in that vacuum, people like Simon Nyoku Ekpa and Dr. Ngozi Orabueze were becoming the loudest voices, filling the space once occupied by elected governors and traditional leaders. But how long this new order can hold remains to be seen. Because for every new recruit joining the Biafran Liberation Army, there is a family worried about their son's safety. For every gun raised in defiance, there is a widow praying her husband doesn't become the next casualty. And for every new proclamation of sovereignty, there is the lingering memory of a war that once tore this region apart. The road ahead is not just filled with checkpoints and bullets. It is filled with questions. Who truly speaks for Biafra? Can unity be achieved in a movement already splintering at the seams? Will the call for new recruits strengthen the liberation cause or deepen the internal divide?
May the soul of the Biafran fallen heroes and heroines rest in perfect peace as we continue to fight for the total liberation of Biafra.
Yes, sir.
Fellow comrade and the United States of Biafra, today being the 30th May 2025, I, Commander Son of the Gods from Amambala State, under the leadership of our leader, Mazen Dekano, and our Prime Minister, Simon Ekpa, and the Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Ngozi Orabueze. We remember all the Biafra fallen heroes and heroines as they continue to rest in peace. Today, being the 30th May 2025, we, the Biafra Liberation Army and the Biafra Defense Forces, we will continue to protect our land and our people, the integrity and the sovereignty of the United States of Biafra, which was declared on November 29, 2024 in Lati, land. We hereby call on all the Nigerian forces occupying our territories to leave all the 40 states of Biafra. We will defend our people and we will fight for our land. All hail Biafra.
Give me gun. Action! Where you go? Give me the gun. Wait.
I guess I dropped the alpha. No, I guess you're going to the church. Who I hear? There, such a rule. You do what I know now. Yeah. That's it, so follow.
You don't see them, and they have had. Yes.